Right now, your timer component has few logic inside, but the amount of logic might increase, both because of how to handle the view or how to calculate this countdown. Angular Good Practices tells you to use the single responsibility principle, and in this case we are not following those principles because the container shouldn't know how the countdown is computed. In order to do that, we have services. So to solve this issue, I'm gonna move the logic of the timer to a service that will be called timer service. Services are singleton objects where you should put the business logic of your application. So right-click on timer folder, make a new file. I'm gonna call it timer.service.ts. And here I will create the basic structure of the service. I have to import from Angular Core injectable. Then I use the injectable decorator before the class export class timer service. Right now it's an empty class, the only thing it has is an empty constructor. Well, this is more related to the services, but the injectable decorator I'm using before the timer service class, it's not really needed right now, but it's something recommended to do when you create services, because this way you are saying that this service can inject other services. So if in the future your service depends on other services, you don't get issues with Angular not understanding where this service comes from or how to create it. Anyway, my service is created now, and I'm gonna paste there all the logic from my timer component. I start by the properties related with the timer. I'll paste them here. And now I copy methods from engine destroy until clear timeout. Cat here, paste here. I create also a new property init in the service. Private init type number to 0. Now I will update the method startCountdown to pass a value as an argument. Here in restartCountdown I can receive this init value, but it's optional. That's why I use the question mark. Then if init exists, I set it to the init private property I have just declared. This.init equals the init I have received on restartCountdown as an argument. And why? Because restartCountdown is gonna be called from the component side to set up the countdown. And then it will be also called here with no init value to reset the countdown. I need to comment now this line, this onComplete.emit. We'll talk later about how to do this from a service. And we move to the next point, this ng-on-destroy. As services do not have the life cycle of the components, ng-on-destroy is not going to be called anytime. So what we can do is just to create a method destroy that calls this clear timeout. And inside the component we create an ng-on-destroy, and here we destroy our timer. Okay, I have this timer service ready. It contains now all the business logic of the timer, but now I need to inject it and use it. In this case, I'm gonna do it at the component level because this service is handling the state of the component. I come here to the component decorator, I add providers, and inside the expected array, I add the timer service. I have to import it also, of course. As you can see here, import timer service from app timer service, or simply /timer service. Now Angular knows how to get the provider of timer service, but I need to pass it for dependency injection to the constructor of the timer component. So I declare this argument public timer of type timer service. This way I'm declaring in this class a property timer that will be initialized to a timer service by Angular. Inside an init, component is not using this countdown anymore. I will just call this.timer.restartCountdown. Remember, now I can pass the init value, so I pass here this.init, the initial value. So now, in the init method of my component, the only thing I'm doing is just restart my timer. In a very similar way, in my ng-on-destroy, if my component gets destroyed, I will call this.timer.destroy, and this way the timeout will be cancelled in case there's one running at the time. Well, your component now looks cleaner, but don't get confused, it is still a stateful component, because it is communicating with the service to get data, and even manipulate that data. And in fact, that's what we have to do now, just manipulate the state with the play and pause buttons. So we move to the timer template. You can see, of course, that nothing of this is working because I have to update it to use my service. Here I can use in progress init-timer.countdown because countdown is a public property of my service. Also in the time binding I use timer.countdown. I do the same also with the paused usage, and also with the toggle countdown, timer.toggle countdown, and finally timer.restart countdown. After all those changes, if I go to the browser, I should expect it to work exactly the same as before the refactor. It's already initialized. If I click play, the countdown begins, no problem. If I pause it, it stops. I press play again, countdown continues, and if I click restart, it resets. And then I can use it another time as expected. So my timer component works exactly the same as before, but with the difference that now all the business logic of the timer it's inside a service. So now my component looks much more cleaner, although it keeps being a component because it's handling this timer and it's able to change the state, as you can see here in the template.